Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we are back onto some of the shakedown fixes for the Alfarrari. Alright guys, welcome back, and if you were watching last week you would have seen that the Alfarrari is on the road and it rips. It actually is a lot of fun on the road. There's still a lot of little things that I need to work on, and that is what I'm going to get stuck into today. I did promise that I was going to get onto the Frankenhauler, but as much as I'm dying to work on that, there are just so many little bits and pieces that I need to work on the Alfarrari to get it more drivable. There's lots of tweaks that I can do to improve it, and I think I've got to get into that and get that done before we jump back into the fun on the Frankenhauler. If you missed the last episode, which I highly recommend watching, ripping around in the Alfarrari, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up, and like always, like and comment. That all helps out this crazy algorithm. So where we left last week, there were a whole bunch of comments about the video, and it was quite popular, which is good to see. A lot of you were waiting to see it out on the road, and I was waiting to get out and drive it, and it was great to get out last week and actually rip it. And it's good. There are a few major points that I brought up that I need to work on, and that's what I'm going to try and be tackling this week. One of the big points was that it doesn't sound like a Ferrari. That I'm not going to tackle this week, but that is something for the future. There was a few people who put me on to a bunch of different videos. There were lots of questions about, do I have a crossover pipe? This is a flat plane crank V8. It does not need a crossover pipe to sound good. The crossover pipe is a cross plane crank V8 type thing. So basically everything except for sort of exotic cars that have the flat plane cranks. This, I did have a crossover. I actually blocked it off. It made no difference. Basically, because a flat plane crank engine fires left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, it's all nice and even. Whereas a cross plane crank V8, like any Chev or Ford or whatever, basically generally just have a cross plane crank V8, and that goes sort of left, right, 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 left, left, right, left, whatever. It's all over the place and it's not even. And that's where the crossover pipe helps. On the flat plane crank engines, it's not a thing. But somebody did put me onto, there's a YouTube channel, My Steer, who's done a bunch of sort of research on the sounds of it, and it sounds like stepped headers are the way to get that high-pitched scream. But before I even get to that, one of the big issues and one of the reasons why I think this sounds more like a modified Alfa is because it has unequal length headers. They are like vastly unequal length, whereas the factory Ferrari ones are pretty close to equal length. I don't know if they are technically. They look like they're very close. These are miles off, so the pulses are not even. And particularly on an engine where the pulses are, as I said, left, right, they should be a nice, smooth, even sound, which is why the Ferrari, even at idle, usually has that sort of very smooth, even sound, as opposed to that lumpy sound that sort of American-style V8s have. That is something I'll work on in the future, and as I said, the stepped headers and stuff will help get that high-pitched scream. Whether I get that or not, I'd like to have that more even sound, and that's something that I want to work on in the future, but that is not something for today. A couple of things that I would like to work on. First big thing is that the exhaust on this car is far too loose, and it actually bangs around and clanks around way too much. Basically, I did all of my exhaust hangers hanging straight down, so there's nothing to stop the exhaust going from side to side, and it just sort of wobbles like this. So I need to put some hangers, I think, left and right to stop it from going like that, so it can sort of be a little bit more secure where it is. So that is the first thing I'm going to tackle, is get underneath, have a look, and see what we can do about that exhaust system. All right, so this is the exhaust at the moment, and it swings around and bashes into things, and it's actually damaging the body of the car. It's far too loose, so I need to do something about that. I'm going to add a couple more exhaust hangers. I've got a few, but as I said, they're all virtually just hanging straight down. So I'm going to add a couple horizontally opposing each other so that it will try and cut down some of that lateral movement. So let's start working out where I'm going to put them and make up some mounts. All right, so I've just tacked on some new hangers on either side. So these are another 2 hangers to what I already have. So I've got old ones up here, and these are right near the back of the exhaust, and that has firmed things up quite a bit. Yeah, it is much more stable left and right. I also tied the mufflers together with this crossover bar that bolts on to the 2 mufflers. So before they were only joined all the way up here at the X pipe, but now if you go back to the second lot of mufflers, and they're joined together. So it's just made everything a lot more rigid than it was. So now I will weld them solid, and we should be good. All right, that is much better. Now I can yank on it all over the place, and it's barely moving. Like, it does move, but not a crazy amount. Now that the 2 sides are tied together and everything else is lined up, that is much better. Big improvement over what was there. So that is one job marked off the list. All right, and you might have seen me using the very cool Rev Head helmet from World Class. And that is this month's giveaway with World Class. They're giving away 5 of these cool Rev Head helmets with sort of, yeah, all sorts of car paraphernalia all over the outside of them. Very cool helmet, nice big opening. I've been using it for a long time, and it's the good thing. Go and check out the link in the description to World Class, and yeah, enter in to get another giveaway. They've been giving away heaps of stuff this year, and they've really helped out the channel. So go and check them out. It's well worthwhile. All right, let's move on to the next task at hand. All right, so the next thing on the agenda is my indicators. Now, these have been a pain the whole time I've been driving this car, and I thought I'd take you through and show you what I've done. So if you were following along, you would have seen basically what I've used. I've used the mechanism out of the Alfa, but it made an adapter to mount it to the Toyota Yaris power steering column I have in the car. After doing a bit more research, it turns out what was part of the issue I thought I had with my power steering dropping out was actually the boss kit of the steering wheel binding on the indicators. So that is not good. That's not what we want, and yeah, that is part of my issue where it felt like the power steering was stopping. It was actually the steering wheel was binding. It's only light, it's easy enough to get past it, but you're just trying to just give that little bit of steering input, and it would catch, and I thought the power steering was stopping, but it wasn't that. And of course, it was actually sort of self-indicating on and off, and wasn't cancelling. It was just a pain. Now, the way these originally cancelled was it was a very simple method where connected to either side of the indicator was this spring that's a long spring that wraps around the steering column, and the friction of the steering column when you're turning it left and right will actually flick it back. Now, I've spent probably 10 hours now over the last few evenings trying to modify and redesign a Toyota self-cancelling indicator system. Because this is just a very floppy, horrible indicator, I really thought it would be nice if I could get a nice solid indicator out of the Toyota and reuse this. And I spent a lot of time on a 3D printer printing a whole lot of internal pieces and realizing it's actually a very complicated sort of little system to get a indicator to cancel. It's one thing to have a switch on and off, but to get it to cancel and get something that can actually trip when a steering wheel goes past it, it can turn one way, but then the other way it trips it back to neutral again. It's actually quite complicated. And yeah, I was playing around with the system quite a bit, and after a lot of messing around, I tried to retrofit the whole thing, and the whole unit is just too big to fit in where I've got it. I have to redesign the whole column and everything. So after all of that, I'm scrapping it. I'm going back to where I was, and I just need to now make a little bit of clearance in this indicator system so that I don't have binding anymore, and hopefully the indicators will work well enough as they are. All right, well, that clearancing on the bottom of the Boss kit was just enough to stop my indicator binding. So that was actually my power steering problem by the looks of things. Well, part of it. The other part is that when I'm at idle, or idle is not too bad, but low revs, the alternator's obviously not making quite enough power to power the power steering. Whereas as soon as I get the revs up a little tiny bit, the power comes through and the power steering works great, so that's good. My dash gauges are horrible, and that is on the list. I am going to, as much as I tried to get this work, I am pretty confident now I'm going to go with a screen. My temperature gauge has died and stopped working. You can see the backlights are completely different. It's just not nice, and if you watch the latest Project Binky, you'll see that there are all sorts of issues trying to get nice matching gauges as much as you want it to work. I think I'm going to get I'm going to do something with the screen so it still will look like it's factory. It'll still have this same shroud or same thing, which I will 3D print and make, and have a screen hidden behind. It'll look like a standard old car. But the gauges will work. It'll give me all the information I need, as opposed to the sort of delays I get, and nothing's quite right on this, and it's just, I've struggled with it, and I'm not happy with the quality. I think the only way to get it the way that I want it to look right is just to do it with a screen. And let's move on to the next challenge. All right. So overnight, I actually posted up on the Link ECU forum and got a response. And sort of, I was struggling with an issue with this car. Every time I backed off the accelerator, it was dropping down to about 500 RPM before it was actually catching the revs and bringing it back up to an idle of 980 or something is what I've got it set to. And it was really difficult to drive. It didn't drive well. As I mentioned, the power steering was dropping out and all that sort of thing. And my favourite tuner, Adam, at Link, he jumped on there and made me an e-log, and the car has transformed. Driving it at low revs now is so much better. It was really difficult to drive before. It just, because the rev kept dropping, it was sort of, I had to keep revving it. It just was uncomfortable drive, and it makes such a difference to actually get a decent tune in it. And every little thing I'm doing on this car is getting better and better and better. The steering feels so much better now. The power steering is actually working and doing what it's supposed to do. The indicator's working. It's not self-cancelling. That's something I want to go into in the future, because at this stage it's just not. I want this car to be as perfect as I can make it, and even working as it's supposed to. This indicator from Alfa, they're not good. It's flimsy and floppy and not very nice. I want a nice positive click and something more like what a modern car would have. And I've got to try and see if I can find an indicator stalk from something other than the Toyota that I had. The issue with the Toyota was that stalk is not just an indicator. It does lights and all sorts of things. So it moves up and down and backwards and forwards and it has a whole bunch of functions I don't need. So obviously there are plenty of cars out there that will do that. The Alfarrari is still jumping out of gear. That is something that, yeah, I have a suspicion it could be that there's a rubber boot underneath the leather gear boot that I've got here. I've got like a rubber gator that's under there that could be pushing it out of gear. A lot of people suggest it could be gear selector forks and things like that. It could well be. It's also the fact that it vibrates a lot, and maybe that's what's doing it. But let's let her in. Oh, that was a limiter, and that was a gear crunch in the third because I missed the gear. But she's just so fun. She just wants to play. So overall, the Alfarrari is getting better each step of the way. I've definitely got to do something about those engine mounts. That's something that I am going to tackle. But it's fun. Oh, and it's getting more fun each time I drive it. And yeah, I am really happy with how it's coming together. When I first drove it, I must admit, I was like, oh, this thing is pretty horrible. But now the exhaust doesn't rattle around, and it probably doesn't look like I've done a lot in this video because there's lots of things I was doing off camera that weren't really very interesting. I fixed the door latch, it wasn't opening every time, and lots of little things that just start making the car much more drivable, much more useful, and really into the car that I want it to be. So, little baby steps, and each little bit is getting it that little bit further towards being the exact car that I want. Alright guys, well I think that's going to be it for this week, so I think that means it's time for fun facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, Ferrari started releasing its pinnacle of road cars with the 288 GTO in 1984. This was a homologation road car originally intended for racing, and a few years later it was followed by the F40. Then came the F50, the Enzo, and the Alfarrari. Only a few weeks ago, Ferrari revealed its latest vehicle in this lineup with the F80, which has taken design elements from the Daytona and has a similar design language to the 12-cylindry. It will be powered controversially by a twin-turbo 3-litre V6, making 900 horsepower. Now this is assisted by an extra 3 electric motors making 300 horsepower, taking it in total to a whopping 1200 horsepower. Now the V6 engine may seem like an odd choice for Ferrari's Halo car, but it has been taken from the winning car in the 2023 and 2024 24 Hours of Le Mans, the 499P. Ferrari states that, as well as being its most powerful car, the F80 also makes over a ton of downforce. All
right, we are getting there on the Alfarrari. every little thing that I'm doing is just making it that much better. I mean, we're 98% of the way there. That last 2% is what really makes it, takes it from being something that might look good at a car show and actually turns into something that's actually usable. And that's really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that I can just get in and drive. Mrs. Jeff can drive it, but I can also take it to the track. I can also road trip it. I can. It just needs to be able to do everything, and each thing I'm chipping away at it. So yeah.
So the devil's in the detail.
It is, and a lot of it is just...
It's that last little bit that's often the hardest, isn't
and
it?
you don't know what it's like until you actually start using it. You know, things work in theory, and then when you get to practice, and I couldn't actually use it until now, really, to properly sort of shake it down, and that's, yeah, it's getting there.
Shake it down.
That's
All
it.
right.
The shakedown.
Like and subscribe if you know what you're thinking. You want to help them out. Patreon. We're super appreciative. And I think I'll be doing any more. You got one more before the Christmas.
There'll be an update next week for just before Christmas, and yes, unfortunately, I haven't been able to get back on the Frankenhauler of late. It is coming. I am going to be getting onto the Frankenhauler, but that will have to be something for a future, future me, because I just don't have time. I'm going everywhere at the moment, and yeah, it's a
busy time of year.
Yeah,
everybody's
it's a busy time of year, so
feeling that.
All right, see you guys.
Bye, guys. Now the F80 has taken design elements from the Daytona. It will be powered, controversially, by a engine. It will be powered, controversially, by a twin-turboed 3-litre.
Yes.
It will be powered, controversially, by a twin-turboed